Hey, this is Mrs. Gervasio here with Monday's homework. Okay, be sure to watch and re-watch the tutorial, pause for the practice problems, and of course come back and check and see how you did. Complete the homework at the end of the tutorial, and of course show all of your work. Okay, so today we are working on division, and it really is as easy as pie as long as you follow every single step. Okay, but before we get into the steps, there's just a few key words that we need to really know, one of which is an array, and we should already know that. Array is an arrangement of objects, pictures, or numbers in columns or rows, and that helps us arrange our numbers and organize our numbers. The word divide means to separate or break into equal groups. That's what we need to remember, equal groups. The word divisor is actually the number that you're dividing by. And you'll see an example of that in a little bit. The dividend is the number that is actually being broken up into the equal groups. And then the quotient is our answer in a division problem. Okay, when we are looking at 6 divided by 3 equals 2, the 6 is actually the dividend. The divisor, the one that's doing all the work, is the 3. And then the 2 is our answer, and it's like the queen. It's just sitting on top, and that is our quotient. All right, now we're getting into the division steps, and we will need to divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat or remainder, and then of course check your work. A way to help us remember what exactly those steps are and what order they come in is we have, does McDonald's sell burgers really cheesy? And again, that's divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat or remainder, and then check your work. And here we have our first practice problem. We have 85 is our dividend, and we are dividing that by 5, which is our divisor. Okay, so we have 85 divided by 5, and we put the does McDonald's sell burgers really cheesy on the side, the divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat, and then check over on the side to remind us of our steps. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves, how many times does 5 go into 8? Now, if you're not sure, you can draw the 8 little tally marks and see how many groups of 5 you can make. So here we have 8 tally marks, and we're seeing how many 5s we can make. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have one group of 5. So the 1 goes above the 8 because 5 can go into 8 one time. So we divided, now we need to multiply, and we're actually going to multiply 1 times 5, and that of course gets us 5. And then the next step is subtract. We have to say 8 take away 5, and that gets us 3. Now the B stands for, good job, bring it down. And we're bringing down the 5 now. Okay, so check. And now we are having to repeat, and this is where kids get confused. So right now we are repeating the whole process all over again. So we're going to say how many times, we're going to bring down the 5 because we're going to repeat this whole process again. How many times does 5 go into 35? Now, it would be very helpful if you knew your multiplication facts, but if you didn't, you can always do repeated addition and up until 35. And so 5 plus 5 is 10, add another 5 is 15, add another 5 is 20, another 5 is 25, another 5, oops, another 5 is 30, and then another 5 is 35. And now we have to see how many 5s we have in 35. So you go ahead and count just the 5s that you actually added. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 5s. So how many times does 5 go into 35? That would be 7. So again, we divided, check. Now we have to multiply. We're going to say 7 times 5, which is again 35. Now we have to subtract. 35 take away 35 is 0. Now there isn't any other numbers right here. There's nothing else there. So we don't have to repeat. And this is a 0, so there's not a remainder. There's nothing left over. So all we have to do now is check our work, which is as easy as pie. So you go ahead and squiggle, 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 and then you take our quotient, which is 17, and you put it on top, and you take our divisor, which is 5, and you put it right there, and you multiply them together. So you have 7 times 5, which is 35. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. And here is where this handy dandy little box comes in to play, because I actually have you put a box around that answer, around that product, and I have you put a box around your dividend, and I have you connect them to remind you that they actually have to be the same. When they're the same, that means you have the correct answer. Alright, here's another practice problem. It's 16 divided by 8. And we have the does McDonald's sell burgers really cheesy, or divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat, and then check. Okay, now you're going to look at 16 divided by 8 and you're going to say, oh, I already know the answer. Well, the reason why I have you practice with the easier problems is because we are going to get into much bigger problems, and you need to master these steps now with the easier problems. So go ahead and pause me, try to work it out using all the steps, and then come on back. Okay, so hopefully you paused me, you came on, and now you're back to check your work. So the first thing you have to do is divide. You ask yourself, how many times does the 8 go into the 1? Well, here's one tally mark. How many groups of 8 can we make with that? 0. So you put a 0 up top and you just divided. Now you have to multiply. 0 times 8 is 0. Okay, you divide, multiply, now you have to subtract. 1 take away 0 is still 1. Check. Now you have to bring down. So you bring down the 6. Check. And the R stands for repeat. So you have to go back up and do it all over again. How many times does 8 go into 16 now? And no, you could not have skipped the step, because we are not to that point where you're skipping steps yet. So how many times does 8 go into 16? And you will say, of course, 2. At least I hope. And so you divided, check. Now you have to multiply. 2 times 8 is 16. You multiplied, check. Now you have to subtract. 16 take away 16 is 0. Check and bring down. But again, there's nothing there. So you don't have anything to bring down. And we don't need to repeat because there's nothing else there. And there's no remainder because there's nothing left over. It's a 0. So now we get to go ahead and check our work. So squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. Pause me and check your work. Alright, hopefully you pause me and you're back. So you have our quotient, which is 2, times our divisor, which is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Remember, put a box around it, put a box around the dividend, and connect them. And don't forget that if I'm going way too fast for you, then you need to pause it and back me up, okay? And our last practice problem, 30 divided by 3. Does McDonald's sell burgers really cheesy? And divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat or remainder, and check your work. Pause me and work it out. Okay, so hopefully you've paused me and now you're back to check your work. So the first thing you have to do is see how many times does 3 go into 3. And that would be once. Check. Now you have to multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. Check. Now you have to subtract. 3 take away 3 is 0. Check. Now you have to bring down. Bring down the 0. No problem. Check. Now you have to repeat or remainder. Well, we have to, let's see. You might think that you're finished, but you're not, because you have this big open space right there that you need to fill. So we are not finished yet. So you have to repeat. So you have to divide. I know it sounds silly, but you do. And you have to do it all over again. So divide. How many times does 3 go into 0? And that would be 0. Check. Now you have to multiply. 0 times 3, which equals 0. Check. Subtract. 0 take away 0 is 0. Check. And bring down. But there's nothing else to bring down. So there's no remainder because there's nothing left over, just a 0. And so now we need to check our work. So pause me and check it. And you should have 10 times 3, which equals 30. You put a box around that, a box around your dividend, connect them, and yay, hopefully you got it right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at your homework. Okay, and here is the part of the homework that you need to actually bring into class tomorrow. Oh, that's okay. It's not very many problems at all. So we have 36 divided by 3. Okay, do not skip steps. I promise you, you start skipping steps now, it's going to get a lot harder when you have larger numbers. 34 divided by 2. And 24 divided by 6. Again, do not skip steps. Okay? And there you have it. There was your homework for tonight. Any problems, make sure to talk to me tomorrow. All right? That's it. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.